The facility was called Harmony House, an orphanage, 200 children, and I authorized its destruction. 3 hours earlier, the surveillance feed flickered across my compound eyes as I, Intelligence Officer Vrakesh of the Calthrine Imperium, reviewed the target coordinates one final time. 3 cycles of reconnaissance had confirmed it. A human facility, isolated, poorly defended, located on the 4th continent of their pathetic little world. Officer Vrakesh, my subordinate Krill chirped, his mandibles clicking with barely contained excitement. The strike wing reports optimal firing solutions. Shall I authorize the bombardment? I leaned back in my command throne, savoring the moment. 16 standard years of war against these upstart primates, and finally, we would break their spirit. Not through attacking their military installations. No, we had learned that lesson the hard way. Not their industrial centers, which they rebuilt with infuriating speed. This time, we would hit something that would truly hurt. Proceed, I hissed, watching the holographic display update in real time. The facility was called, according to our translation algorithms, Harmony House. Intelligence suggested it housed approximately 200 juvenile humans whose parental units had perished in the conflict. An orphanage, in their quaint terminology, undefended, vulnerable, perfect. My thorax vibrated with satisfaction as the first plasma charges descended through Earth's atmosphere. You see, we Calthrine pride ourselves on strategic thinking. We understand psychological warfare. We had studied human history, their conflicts, their rules of engagement. We knew about their Geneva Conventions, their international laws, their precious moral codes, and we knew, that they would follow these rules even when fighting us. Fools! The explosion registered on our sensors as a brilliant flash of orange and white. Thermal readings spiked. Structural integrity of the target dropped to 0 within 2.3 seconds. Efficient, clean, devastating. Sir, we are detecting something unusual, Krill ventured, his voice uncertain. Human communication networks are... I waved a dismissive claw. Shock, grief, denial. The standard emotional cascade for their species. Monitor their diplomatic channels. I expect surrender negotiations within 3 planetary rotations. How wrong I was. The silence lasted exactly 14 hours, 23 minutes, and 41 seconds. Then humanity spoke. It was not their diplomats who addressed us, not their politicians with their carefully worded statements and appeals to galactic law. No, the message came from someone whose designation translated simply as the President, broadcast simultaneously on every frequency we monitored. The human appeared on screen, and I noticed immediately that something was different. Gone was the careful diplomatic mask we had grown accustomed to. This human's face was empty, not sad, not angry, just empty, like staring into the void between stars. To the Calthrine Imperium, the human began, their voice perfectly level, perfectly calm, perfectly terrifying. You have made a choice today. You have chosen to abandon the rules of civilized warfare. You have chosen to target the defenseless. You have chosen to kill children. The President paused, and I swear by the eternal hive, those eyes seemed to look directly through the camera, through space, directly at me. We acknowledge your choice. We accept it, and we will respond in kind. The transmission ended. Krill looked at me, confusion evident in his postural shift. That is all. No threats, no demands for reparation? Apparently, I muttered, though something cold had begun to coil in my secondary stomach. Maintain battle readiness. Increase patrols around our primary staging areas. The first indication that something had changed came 6 hours later. Our mining colony on Theta Persei Thorth simply vanished. Not destroyed, not conquered, vanished. 12,000 Calthrine support personnel, their genetic offspring in the breeding chambers, gone. When our relief fleet arrived, they found nothing but fused glass where the installation had stood. Temperature readings suggested weapons operating at levels we did not know humans possessed. Clearly a military target, I assured my increasingly nervous staff. They are escalating within acceptable parameters. Then our agricultural world of Hesh-2 reported contact with human forces. Contact that lasted exactly 19 seconds before all communication ceased. Orbital reconnaissance showed every single settlement, farm, and processing center reduced to molecular slag. Population 43 million. Survivors 0. Those were civilians. Kerriel's voice cracked as he processed the reports. Agricultural workers, breeding population. I felt my certainty beginning to crack. Send a diplomatic probe. Remind them of the Galactic Accords regarding non-combatant populations. The response came within the hour, not from their diplomats, from someone whose title translated as Fleet Admiral Marcus Stone. His message was brief. You demonstrated yesterday what rules you wish to follow. We are simply following your lead. The Geneva Conventions, quaint human traditions, not applicable to you, not anymore. You wanted total war? You have it. And by all the stars in the spiral arm, they meant it. The humans had, throughout the entire 16 years of warfare, fought with one hand tied behind their backs. We knew this, of course, but we assumed it was weakness. We assumed they lacked the capability to do otherwise. We assumed their adherence to their precious laws of war was necessity, not choice. We were so wrong. Within one planetary rotation, 17 Calthrine military installations ceased to exist, not damaged, not captured, ceased to exist. The humans deployed weapons we had never seen, projectiles that seemed to phase through defensive shields, energy weapons that turned atmosphere itself into plasma, and most horrifying of all, silence. They did not communicate. They did not demand surrender. They simply appeared, destroyed, and moved on. Our Hive Queen herself addressed their leadership, offering to return to the previous rules of engagement, to honor the accords both species had followed until now. The human response was delivered by that same Admiral Stone. You killed 214 children yesterday. They were 5 to 17 standard years old. Their names were Emma, Lucas, Priya, James. He proceeded to read every single name. It took 47 minutes. We will remember each of them, and we will ensure you never forget. That was when we learned about humanity's Strategic Orbital Command, a military division we had never known existed. Our intelligence had been tracking their fleet movements, their obvious military installations, their transparent command structures. What we had not known, what we could not have known, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario, preparing for the day they no longer had to fight fair. My strategic analysis console lit up with incoming reports, each one worse than the last. The humans were not just attacking military targets now, they were systematically eradicating every Calthrine presence in contested space. Our shipyards, vaporized, our command stations, silent, our reinforcement fleets, intercepted and destroyed before they could even engage. Sir, Kral's voice was barely a whisper. Tactical analysis suggests we are losing assets at a rate 17 times faster than any previous engagement. If this continues, we will lack sufficient military presence to defend the home worlds within 9 planetary rotations. I stared at the tactical display, watching red icons blink out of existence across multiple systems. Each icon represented hundreds or thousands of Calthrine lives, entire battle groups, decades of military investment. Gone. The humans were dismantling our empire with the efficiency of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a natural disaster. Contact the Hive Queen, I managed. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostilities and unconditional surrender. But it was already too late. A new transmission arrived, this time from someone designated simply as Commander. The human was younger than the others, but their eyes held that same terrible emptiness. We have identified 17 Calthrine worlds with significant civilian populations, not military targets, not strategic locations, just civilians. We thought you should know. My primary heart seized. You would not dare. The Galactic Council would. The Galactic Council stood by while you bombed an orphanage. The commander interrupted, their voice still perfectly calm, perfectly empty. They released a statement expressing deep concern. We are no longer interested in what the Galactic Council thinks. You would commit genocide. I could not keep the horror from my voice. You would slaughter billions. The commander leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in those dead eyes. Not anger, not hatred, something far worse. You already did. You set the precedent. You established the rules. 214 children. You killed them to break our spirit, to make us surrender. A pause. It did not work, but it did teach us something valuable. What? I whispered. That we have been fighting you with restraint you did not deserve. That we have been honoring agreements you did not respect. That we have been treating you as civilized beings when you demonstrated you were not. The commander's expression did not change, but their next words chilled my entire exoskeleton. So we will show you what humanity looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. The transmission ended. Panic spread through our command center like thermal bloom. Officers abandoned their stations. Kuril was openly keening in distress, and I finally understood the magnitude of our error. We had studied human history. We had read about their wars, their conflicts, their capacity for violence, but we had made a critical mistake. We had assumed that their laws of war, their Geneva Conventions, their rules of engagement existed because humans were weak, because they lacked the stomach for true warfare. The truth was far more terrifying. Those rules existed because humans knew exactly what they were capable of. Those laws were not chains imposed by the weak upon the strong. They were chains the strong imposed upon themselves to protect everyone else from what they could become. And we had just convinced them to remove those chains. The first of the 17 worlds fell within 3 hours. The humans did not use conventional weapons. They did not need to. They simply deployed something their databanks called atmospheric igniters, devices that turned a planet's own air into a self-sustaining firestorm. 30 billion Calthrine died screaming as their world burned from pole to pole. 16 worlds remained. The Hive Queen broadcast unconditional surrender on every frequency. She offered reparations. She offered territory. She offered anything and everything humanity might demand. The response came from Admiral Stone. Just 2 words. Too late. World number 2 died to something they called tectonic destabilizers. The planet literally tore itself apart. 8 billion dead. 15 worlds remained. I watched helpless as humanity demonstrated every horror they had been holding back for 16 years. Every weapon system they had developed but never deployed. Every tactical doctrine they had planned but never implemented. Every nightmare scenario they had prepared for but hoped never to use. And through it all, they broadcasted a continuous stream, not propaganda, not threats, just names. The names of the 214 children who died at Harmony House. Read slowly, carefully, respectfully, over and over. A reminder of why this was happening. A testament to the cost of our hubris. World number 3 fell to biological agents specifically engineered to target Calthrine physiology. 5 billion dead. 14 worlds remained. Please. I found myself transmitting directly to human command. Please stop this. We surrender. Completely. Unconditionally. We will accept any terms, any punishment. Just stop. Admiral Stone appeared on screen one final time. Their expression had not changed. We will stop, they confirmed. When we reach 14, 1 billion dead for every child. That is the exchange rate you established. We are simply collecting the debt. And they did. 14 worlds burned before humanity finally, mercifully, stopped. 214 billion Calthrine civilians dead. Exactly 1 billion for each child at Harmony House. Mathematical, precise, merciless. When it was over, when the fires had finally cooled and the screaming had stopped, the surviving Calthrine leadership was brought to Earth for the formal surrender, not to their capital, not to their military headquarters, to the ruins of Harmony House. We stood among the rubble, the twisted metal, the scorched earth where children had played just days before. The president who had delivered that first terrible message stood before us. We want you to understand something, the president said quietly. For 16 years we fought you according to rules. Our rules. Rules we created because we know what we are capable of. Rules we maintained because we believed in civilization, in law, in the possibility of peace. A pause. You taught us those rules were weakness. We were wrong, I whispered, my voice breaking. We did not understand. No, the president agreed. You did not, but you do now. Behind them, workers were already beginning the reconstruction. A memorial wall was being erected, each name carefully carved. 214 names. 214 reasons why the Calthrine Imperium no longer existed. We will never forget what we did, the president continued. The 14 worlds, the billions dead. That guilt is ours to carry. But we want you to remember why it happened. We want you to remember that we gave you every opportunity to choose differently. We want you to remember that humanity's capacity for mercy is matched only by our capacity for wrath. The president turned to leave, then paused. And we want you to tell every species in the galaxy, the humans fight by rules, honor those rules, and they will treat you with dignity and respect. Break those rules, target the innocent, harm the helpless. Those empty eyes fixed on me one last time, and they will teach you what total war truly means. 3 standard months after the surrender, I found myself assigned to what the humans called the Reconciliation Commission, A deliberately bland name for what amounted to my species' complete subjugation and re-education. Though I suppose we deserved far worse than bureaucratic meetings and historical documentation. The irony was not lost on me that I, intelligence officer Rakesh, the one who had authorized the strike on Harmony House, was now being forced to study exactly what that decision had unleashed. My human liaison was a female designated as Director Catherine Webb. She was older, her face lined with what I had learned to recognize as exhaustion and sorrow. She had lost a niece at Harmony House, a child named Sophie, age 9. I knew this because I had memorized all 214 names. It was the least I could do, though it would never be enough. Today, Director Webb said, her voice professionally neutral as we sat in a conference room overlooking the reconstructed orphanage, we are going to discuss what you actually triggered when you bombed this facility. You think you understand? You do not. She activated a holographic display, and I saw documents materialize in the air between us. Classification levels I had never encountered, code names that made my translator circuits struggle. Project Righteous Fury, she began, initiated 43 years before first contact with your species. Do you know what it was? I shook my head, my antennae drooping in submission. It was humanity's contingency plan for if we ever encountered a hostile alien species that refused to honor the laws of war. She pulled up schematic after schematic, weapon systems, battle plans, strategic doctrines. We spent decades developing these systems, testing them, perfecting them, and then we locked them away and prayed we would never need them. Why? I asked, genuinely confused. If you possessed such superiority, why hide it? Why not use it to establish dominance from the beginning? Director Webb smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because we remember our own history, Officer Rakesh. We remember what happens when the strong have no restraint. We remember the wars before we learned to limit ourselves. Do you know how many humans died in our last global war, before we established international law and rules of engagement? I do not. 85 million. And that was fighting ourselves with primitive weapons by current standards. We learned something from that horror. We learned that the capacity for destruction must be matched by the willingness to show restraint. She leaned forward. Your species never learned that lesson, so we had to teach it to you. She pulled up footage from the 14 worlds. I tried to look away, but she would not permit it. Watch, she commanded. You authorized the death of children to break our spirit. The least you can do is witness what your choice unleashed. World number 4 had been called Hesh Prime in our tongue. A cultural center, libraries, universities, art galleries, 7 billion Calthrine, most of them scholars and artists. The humans had used something they called quantum disruption bombs. Matter simply ceased to maintain cohesion at the molecular level. Buildings, vehicles, bodies, everything reduced to component atoms in seconds. I felt my stomachs heave, but Director Webb continued relentlessly. World number 7, your primary breeding world, 12 billion Calthrine, most of them juveniles in various stages of development. The footage showed massive ships deploying clouds of nanoscale machines, self-replicating disassemblers. They consumed every organic compound on the planet in 6 hours. Then they deactivated themselves as programmed. Stop, I begged. Please, I understand. No, she said coldly. You do not understand. Not yet. Because I have not shown you the part that keeps me awake at night. She pulled up internal human communications, military command channels from the days after Harmony House. I watched as human officers argued. Some wanted immediate overwhelming retaliation, others counseled restraint, urged continued adherence to the laws of war even in the face of our atrocity. The debate raged for hours, their high command genuinely torn between justice and mercy. Then she showed me the vote. The authorization to activate Project Righteous Fury. It had not been unanimous. 37% of their military leadership had voted against it. 37% had wanted to maintain their laws even after what we had done. Do you see? Director Webb asked quietly. Even then, after you murdered children, more than a third of our leaders wanted to show you mercy you had not earned. Wanted to maintain standards you had already violated. That is who we are. That is who we were trying to be. She pulled up one final document, a communication from Fleet Admiral Stone to his subordinate commanders, sent immediately after the authorization was granted. I read it in silence, my translator struggling with the emotional weight of the human's words. To all commands, we are about to commit acts that will haunt us for generations. We are about to become the monsters we swore we would never be. We do this not from hate, but from necessity, not from cruelty, but from justice. When this is over, when the 14 worlds have fallen, I expect each of you to remember that we did not choose this path. The Calthrine chose it for us. Remember that. When the nightmares come, when the guilt threatens to overwhelm you, remember that we gave them every chance to choose differently. Director Webb closed the display. Admiral Stone committed suicide 6 weeks after the war ended. He left a note saying he could not live with what he had ordered, even though he knew it was necessary. 17 other senior commanders followed him into death. 43,000 human soldiers who participated in the 14 Worlds campaign have required psychological intervention for trauma and guilt. She stood, walking to the window overlooking the memorial garden where children now played, their laughter drifting up to us. Your species made us choose between our principles and our survival, between our laws and our loved ones, between who we wanted to be and what we needed to do. She turned back to me, and I saw tears streaming down her face. You forced us to become everything we had spent centuries teaching ourselves not to be, and the price of that. The price is not just the 214 billion Calthrine who died. The price is also the piece of humanity's soul that died with them. I had no response. What could I possibly say? Over the following months, I learned more about humanity than 16 years of warfare had taught me. I learned about their concept of war crimes tribunals, where they judged their own leaders for violations of law during conflict. I learned about their truth and reconciliation processes, where they forced themselves to confront past atrocities. I learned about their memorials to victims of war, their solemn remembrances, their deliberate cultivation of guilt and shame as tools to prevent future horrors. I met human veterans who had participated in the 14 worlds. Each one carried visible scars, not on their bodies but in their eyes. That same terrible emptiness I had seen in the President and Admiral Stone, the look of people who had crossed a line and could never uncross it. One veteran, a ship captain named Douglas Park, spent 3 hours explaining to me exactly how his vessel had deployed the atmospheric igniters that killed 30 billion Calthrine on world number 1. I followed my orders, he said, his voice hollow. I did my duty. I avenged those children. He looked at his hands as if seeing blood on them, and I will never forgive myself, not because it was wrong, but because it was right, because they deserved it, because I would do it again if I had to. That is what makes it unforgivable. I began to understand the true genius and horror of human morality. They had not simply destroyed my species militarily, they had demonstrated something far more terrifying, that they could commit absolute genocide with perfect efficiency while simultaneously condemning themselves for doing so. They could be monsters and judges simultaneously. They could unleash total war while never forgetting that total war was itself a failure. 6 months into my assignment, Director Webb brought me to a secure facility deep beneath the reconstructed Harmony House. We descended through multiple security checkpoints, each requiring biometric confirmation and coded authorization. I am going to show you something, she said as we rode the elevator down, that violates approximately 47 different security protocols. But the Reconciliation Commission has determined you need to see it, to truly understand. The elevator opened onto a vast underground complex, rows upon rows of weapons storage, each container carefully labeled, each system catalogued and maintained. Project Righteous Fury inventory, Director Webb explained. After the war ended, after your surrender, we had a choice. We could destroy these weapons, pretend they never existed, or we could keep them, maintain them, remember what we are capable of. She led me through the facility, showing me horrors upon horrors. Weapons that made the ones used on the 14 worlds look like children's toys. Planetary crackers that could shatter entire continents. Stellar igniters that could turn stars into supernovae. Relativistic kinetic impactors that could sterilize solar systems. We kept them all, she said quietly, not because we want to use them, because we need to remember that we can. We need to remember what restraint actually costs. We stopped before a particular vault. The label read, Omega Protocol, Final Sanction. This, Director Webb said, her hand resting on the vault door, is what we did not use. Even after the 14 worlds, even after 214 billion Calthrine dead, we still held something back. What is it? I whispered, not sure I wanted to know. A weapon that would have ended your entire species. Every Calthrine, everywhere in the galaxy, simultaneously, painlessly, instantly, total extinction in 3.7 seconds. She looked at me. We had the authorization codes ready, the deployment systems prepared, and we chose not to use it. Why? The question escaped me before I could stop it. Because that would have been murder, not justice. Because 214 children, no matter how precious, did not justify complete extinction of a species. She opened the vault, showing me the weapon system, elegant, compact, terrifying in its simplicity. Because we needed to remain human even while doing inhuman things. Because the line between justice and genocide is thin, and we refused to cross it completely. She closed the vault. Your species will live, Officer Vrakish. Diminished, supervised, forever aware of what you provoked, but alive. That is our mercy. That is our restraint. That is the part of our humanity we managed to preserve, even in our darkest hour. We returned to the surface in silence. When we emerged back into the memorial garden, children were being led on a tour by one of the staff members. Human children, yes, but also Calthrine juveniles, offspring of prisoners of war, being raised in the very facility their military had bombed. Director Webb noticed my shock. Did you think we would kill children in revenge? Did you think we had learned nothing from what we were forced to do? She gestured to the playing youngsters. They are innocent. They will grow up knowing what their predecessors did, knowing what ours did in response. They will carry that knowledge into the future, but they will live, because we choose to be better than our worst moments. One of the Calthrine juveniles, no more than 3 standard years old, approached me curiously. She had been born in captivity, knew nothing of the war, the 14 worlds, the horror her species had unleashed. "Hello," she chirped in perfect human standard. "Are you here to visit the memorial? Miss Catherine says we should always remember." I looked down at this innocent child, then up at Director Webb, then across at the wall bearing 214 names. "Yes," I managed, my voice breaking. "We should always remember." The child took my claw in her tiny appendage. "Miss Catherine says remembering hurts, but forgetting hurts more. She says if we remember, we can make sure it never happens again." Out of the mouths of younglings, as the humans say. That evening, I filed my final report to the Reconciliation Commission. I detailed everything I had learned, everything I had witnessed, everything I now understood about the species we had so catastrophically underestimated. The conclusion was simple. Humanity had not defeated the Calthrine Imperium through superior technology or greater numbers or better tactics. They had defeated us through something far more powerful and far more terrifying. They had defeated us through the willingness to become monsters while never forgetting they were monsters, through the capacity to commit absolute horror while maintaining absolute accountability, through the ability to unleash total war while knowing, truly knowing, that total war was itself a moral failure. They had defeated us by being willing to damn themselves to save what they loved, and in doing so they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for millennia. Humanity fights by rules. Honor those rules, and they will treat you with dignity, compassion, and respect. Break those rules, harm the innocent, attack the defenseless, and they will show you exactly why those rules existed in the first place. Not to protect you from them, to protect you from what they become when those rules no longer apply. I concluded my report with a single recommendation, that every Calthrine juvenile, for the next 1,000 generations, be required to visit the Harmony House Memorial, to read the 214 names, to understand what those names cost both species, and to never ever forget that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their tactics or their industrial capacity. It was their ability to choose restraint, and the terrible, terrible price they would exact from anyone who forced them to abandon it. The report was accepted, the recommendation was implemented, and I spend my remaining days at the memorial, greeting visitors, telling them what happened, ensuring that the lesson is never forgotten. Because Director Webb was right. Remembering hurts. The guilt, the shame, the horror of what my decision unleashed. It is a constant weight I will carry until my final molt. But forgetting would hurt more. So I remember, I bear witness, I tell the story, not to excuse what humanity did, but to ensure everyone understands why they did it, and to make absolutely certain that no species ever makes the same mistake we did. The day Earth's orphanage was bombed was the day the Calthrine Imperium died, not in the immediate explosion, not even in the 14 worlds that burned in retaliation. It died in the moment we forced humanity to choose between their principles and their survival, because in making that choice they proved something we had not understood, that a species willing to chain itself with laws and restraint is not weak. They are terrifying beyond measure, because those chains are not imposed from outside. They are chosen, deliberately, carefully, with full knowledge of what lies beneath. And when you force them to remove those chains, when you make them become the monsters they have spent centuries teaching themselves not to be, when you push them to unleash the total war they have prepared for but prayed never to wage, you learn the most important lesson in galactic history, that humanity's mercy is not weakness, it is the greatest act of strength in the known universe, and the price of forcing them to withdraw that mercy is measured in burning worlds and extinct civilizations. We paid that price, 214 billion Calthrine dead, 14 worlds turned to ash and memory. The debt is settled, the lesson is learned, the warning is delivered, and the galaxy will never forget the day humanity stopped fighting fair. The end.
The scariest thing about humans, they build weapons to end galaxies, then lock them away, until someone made them open that vault. Do not be that someone. You are watching Sci-Fi HFY channel. For more stories, please stay tuned to my channel.